This is the No State Project Reloaded. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you all listening in. Hope you enjoyed Mark's Reloaded show there. That was a replay of last night's show. Hopefully with all the meta content in there, all the extra goodies where obviously they can talk between the breaks and you don't get all the annoying adverts cutting in and ruining the flow of the conversation. So I hope you enjoyed it. I was just having a bit of a listen to it. I didn't get to listen to it properly myself last night, and I've had a little bit of a listen to it today, and I haven't got to hear all of it still properly. But I noticed there are a few callers from England that came on, which is great. It's good that more and more people from our side, our neck of the pond, are starting to contact Mark and go on the show. So that's really good. And looking forward to hearing from Fabrice as well. So if you're listening, Fabrice, hi there. Thanks for mentioning me. Right, so today is the 3rd of March, 2013, and it's a Sunday. Time there is 20 to 4 now. The show started about 8:30, or the live show anyway. So, today, if you want to call into the show, I'll get the number up for you. If you can call via Skype, or you can contact me on Autonomist123. That's via Skype if you want to call into the show, and if you have any issues you want to deal with, taxman, criminal, civil, attacks that have been brought against you. It's anything goes here. There's no sacred cows either. So I know a couple of people did actually want to call in at some point. So today, chat was going to be mainly about the tax man again. I'll talk a little bit about income tax, the HMRC, and council tax as well, which are sort of the two biggies that we're stuck with. The way they get us to support them, and the most formal or the most direct form of theft and control they have over us. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. I know someone did want to call into the show actually regarding the HMRC, so I'll look out for that call as best I can, and hopefully bring you in. So the HMRC, if you've listened to Mark's show before, and the call that just came on, the call to shame, let's call it one of Mark's latest to the IRS in America, the woman just ended up putting the phone down on him. She didn't want to discuss the issue of facts. They don't want to know because they basically don't have any. And it's no different in this country. So if you get to listen to a lot of the archive shows and the archive calls that Mark has made, you can get them on his site via markstevens.net. And my site is the No State Projects, uk.co.nr. Still waiting to get the .co.uk thingy sorted out. We'll have that done pretty soon, hopefully. If you listen to a lot of those calls, all you have to do is replace the IRS for the HMRC. And just imagine that's who he's actually speaking to, because the same questions apply regardless. I mean, he talks a lot about the Constitution because that's something that they play on a lot over there. The Constitution in this country very rarely gets mentioned. I was on a forum last year where I was talking to a group of solicitors and barristers, and they were having a pop at me, as you can imagine. But one of them did eventually bring up the issue of the Constitution and said the reason the HMRC can come after you for tax is because it's under the Constitution. So then I snapped back straight away. What facts do you have that the Constitution and the alleged statute is applicable to me? They went dead silent. They didn't want to argue it. Well, they didn't want to discuss it. They just wanted to carry on trying to argue and claim that my arguments were frivolous and all this, that, and the other. Obviously, it wasn't arguments. I was asking for facts. So it doesn't matter whether you're dealing with some bureaucrat on a forum on the internet, or whether you're dealing with these people face to face in a court or some other venue. They act the same way regardless. It's what's called a logical fallacy, is what a lot of them base a lot of their beliefs on, because a lot of this stuff just doesn't follow. You can't bring an accusation to somebody and state that the accusation is evidence itself that you have a liability. It's not. All the time people say that you have an obligation to file a tax return, or that you have an obligation to actually pay tax at all. It's just an opinion. There are no facts backing it up. And referring to the statute, or the code as we call it, makes no difference. It's still an issue of, it's just somebody else's opinion. That's all the statute is somebody else's opinion. And there are no facts to back any of this up. And so that's it. Like I say, whenever you're dealing with the HMRC, you listen to how Mark deals with the IRS over in America. It's the same thing. And one of the best calls he ever did was to what was her name? Kimberly Clark. You can get this on the internet. Just put in Mark Stevens, Kimberly Clark call, or I think it's called owning an IRS officer, something like that. It's about half hour long, I think. And the call was absolutely brilliant. He gets this woman so tight, or she gets herself so tied up in knots that she just can't, she ends up doing the same thing. She just wants to end the call and then, get off the phone to him as quickly as possible. But that is one of the best calls he's ever done, or one of the best calls that he's posted up anyway. And so that will give you an idea of how to go about actually questioning these people yourself. There's no point, just listening to me and taking what I'm saying for it, or even just reading the book. You've got to put this stuff into practice yourself. So a lot of the time, if you get to listen to Mark's calls, you get a feel for how to go about doing this stuff for yourself. That's the best way to learn. Just limit. It's not so much mimicking, but it's understanding the questions and knowing what to ask. A lot of the time, these questions are worded in a certain way where they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. And it's not that you're trying to actually pull tricks on them. You're just trying to get to the facts. And there's very simple and direct ways of simply asking for facts. And that's how Mark has developed this line of questioning. It's nothing new. People have asked these sorts of questions for millennia, over anything, over any issue. And it's just a matter of getting it straight in your head why you're asking for these questions. And it's important to actually understand the facts for yourself. You've got to know what you're actually dealing with. And it comes down to this whole rule. It's never ask a question, never ask a bureaucrat, never ask a bureaucrat a question that you don't already know the answer to. And if you don't know the answer to it, well then fair enough. Ask it then, but it's always wise to actually know the question you're asking for, because a lot of the time it's worse for these people to actually know the answers to these questions than it is not to. Because if they knew the answers to all these questions, they would know full well that they don't have a leg to stand on. They don't have a valid claim against you. Even if they had the facts, it's certainly not going to help them. It's going to make matters worse for them in most cases, and it's the issue of they can't actually produce any facts because they're either they don't know, or they do know the answers but they realise the implications of what those answers are going to be, and therefore they just try to act ignorant and pretend they don't know what it's all. They don't know what the answer is, or they try and make you look stupid and say, and say that by you asking these questions there's something wrong with your thought process as such. And of course, when you're dealing with logic, there's certain philosophies behind that, what's logical and what's not. But as people, logic plays a huge part of our existence, and we do understand fundamental logic and truth, and facts, and you can't get away from that. There's no point getting into a whole philosophical issue about it. There's certain things that we know to be true and certain things that aren't. There's certain things that are just obvious, they're blatant, they're there, and we know it. And they can't be easily disputed. Even though a lot of people still try and turn a lot of these issues into long-winded, metaphysical, stupid arguments. I mean, the amount of people I've been talking to on some of these groups where they're claiming that nothing can be proven to be true and nothing can be proven to be false and all that codswallop. There's certain things we know we can prove as true, and there's certain things we can prove as false. And there's certain methods we use to do that. And the main one is the scientific method. So this is all we're using against them. We're just picking this apart and getting down to the raw basics of it. And what this really is what Mark's developed or his line of thought has taken on this. It's forensically picking it apart. This is forensic examination of the facts. And once you get down to the basic facts, the things that you can't dispute, there's no point going any deeper than that. If you want to go deeper into the issue, well, be my guest. But there's certain issues where once you've arrived at the truth, the basic simple facts, there's no point to dig any further. Even though, like I say, a lot of people do still try, but a lot of the time there's no need. It's like the issue of law. A lot of people will argue this issue about what law really is, claiming, well, it's common law, or it's God-given, or it's natural law, and all that codswallop. It's all just, it's opinion. Now, it may or may not be based on facts. Now, the thing is with law is the law can't itself be based on facts within the realm of, it can't be factually proven to be true. It can be proven to be true that it's somebody's opinion, it's somebody's belief, it's a philosophy. That can be proven as fact. It can, and it can only be proven to be shown to come from the human mind, law as such. When people start talking about the law of physics and things like that, a lot of the time people start bringing gravity when they're talking about law, and they start wanting to argue about facts. They suddenly jump on the law of gravity and say, well, you wouldn't say this about the law of gravity, would you? Yes, I bloody well would. The law of gravity is still an opinion. It's an opinion that it's a law, but you can't use it in the same context as the way you use it with the law, where we use it to restrict somebody's behaviour. A scientific law is something that's fixed, something that can't be changed. But the only grounds on which we can base that on is on a theory, and a theory can be modified and changed. It doesn't necessarily make it wrong, and it doesn't mean gravity itself doesn't exist. This simply means that the explanation we give for it is based on observation, it's based on the objective and empirical evidence. But we may have a theory on how we think gravity works, but we may find in 100 years' time we had it slightly wrong, and the theory has to be modified. However, you can still call it a law because it's still a phenomenon that we can observe and we know exists. It doesn't take that away just because we change a theory on it. The phenomenon itself still exists, regardless of how we choose to interpret it or theorize about it. So a law can be, in scientific terms, can basically mean that. But the trouble is when people start trying to apply that same principle to law, as we call it, regarding, what people can and can't do, or should or shouldn't do, ethics, morals, things like that, it's a completely different story. And like I say, when we talk about a law of a natural phenomenon, say, I was saying gravity, it's an opinion from the point of view of it's that opinion can be based on facts still. It's an opinion that this phenomenon happens because of these reasons, but those reasons can be changed, can be altered. So it makes it an opinion that can be based on facts as we know it at the time. But you have to know that the facts are based on a theory. It's a fact that we have a theory on how gravity works and operates, and why we observe it. But it doesn't mean that the phenomenon itself doesn't exist no more. If we took away that theory, it's still there, whether you like it or not. So maybe that's me just waffling on a bit, but I hope you can try and make sense of what I'm trying to get to. But when we're talking about, law, statutes, that sort of thing to do with people, it's all opinion. There's nothing else behind it. You can only prove that law, in this sense, can only come from somebody else's mind. Now, fair enough, it can be based on ethics and morals and certain things like that, and there's certain facts we can base it on, such as, we're a social animal, and therefore people are, we're like any other animal on the planet, we fear for our health, our existence, and our well-being. We want to protect ourselves, and because of that, we brought about, or we have naturally inbuilt in our minds, it's hardwired, if you like, a form of morals and ethics, things that we can live by, so we can live together as social animals, and so we can ensure our survival, and that the genes keep being passed on a basic scientific level. That can be pretty much shown to be facts. We're no different to any other creature on the planet, and we're certainly no different to any other type of social creature on the planet that lives in big groups. That's anything from a lion to a group of bonobo monkeys in the Congo. They generally cooperate, and they have certain morals and ethics that they live by. And you usually have a hierarchy as well, usually within these groups. The thing is about us, where we're a lot more advanced and we're above that, we don't necessarily need a hierarchy to cooperate and exist together. It's not about who's the biggest and strongest chimp anymore. It's not about that anymore. It's about who's the smartest and who can, not so much who can lead, but generally, who can better our standard of living, our way of life, and they're generally the people who we rely on more than others. But it doesn't mean that we have to have a hierarchy. It doesn't mean we have to have leaders, governments, be controlled by other people, anything like that. We have a moral code that's hardwired in our brain that we can generally live by. So anyway, that's me just waffling on. So I'm not going to bore you to death with any more of that. But anyway, right. So the taxman, whoever wants to call in, you're free to do it now. So I'm taking calls right now, and the number is, if you could please put the number up for me, somebody in the group, and tell me what number you can use to call in via Skype if you've got that facility. Um, Otherwise, just contact me on autonomist123 on Skype, and I'll bring you straight in on the show. Doesn't matter how long you want to talk for. 10 minutes, 5 minutes, half hour, hours, doesn't matter. And whatever problem you're dealing with. So, the HMRC, this is about the time of year now where people are going to start getting walloped by the taxmans. A lot of people had to put in their tax returns allegedly and things like that. I think it was by the end of January. I can't remember the exact date now, but I think it's the end of January. And so what it is that this is now when people are going to start getting fines coming through and dealing with, nasty little letters and notices saying pay up or else, or submit this, submit your paperwork or else. So this is about the time now where people are going to start getting hit by this stuff. I'll give you the landline number. It's just come up now if you want to call in for the show. The landline number is 0161 298 0298. And if you're calling from abroad, add a 0044 before that, or check online and make sure you've got the correct dialing code if you're calling in from outside the British Isles. And that's the landline number anyway. I've not got a Skype number yet. I have to wait for that to come into me. But anyway, if you want to do it for free, it's easy. Just contact me via my thingy as well. You need Dad's calling through. So, like I was saying, with the HMRC, this is about the time now where people are going to start getting hit with these notices. So, the best way to respond back is you just send a 3 or 4 page letter, and 3 or 4 page letter, or 3 or 4 sentence letter. You don't have to ask a lot. And the main thing is, the point to make is, you can call Bob's Backyard. If you want to call on Skype, it's called Bob's Backyard. And they can bring you in on the call through that as well, if you want to call them on Skype. So, what was I saying? Yep. So you'll just send a letter back. Don't refuse to pay. Don't start claiming I'm not going to pay her, or I'll pay on condition of this and condition of that. Forget all that free man stuff where you're sending notices saying, I'll pay you up on proof of claim and all this sort of stuff. None of that's going to work, and it's just going to get you labelled as one of these freemen. They're just going to want to call you a nut job, and it'll end up in the bin, or just put in another pile of red flags. These are the people who are trying all this stuff on, and that's where that's what you'll be categorised as. So try to stay away from that sort of thing. Now, I think all you do is you just send a letter back to them claiming, you're willing to pay, you're willing to, settle this obligation should it exist, and just ask for what facts do you rely on to prove that usually when they send you these things through, they'll put the acts in there, the acts that allegedly, makes you liable for this tax. I think it's the income tax. It could well be the Income Tax Act. I can't remember which year it was, but there's about 3 or 4, I think, that they generally throw about. Can't remember off the top of my head what they all are. But basically, just one question's enough, really. Just that one question alone. What facts do you rely on that the so-and-so Act, the Income Tax Act 2000 and whenever, or 1990, whenever, became applicable to me? What facts do you rely on? So you're asking them for facts to prove that an obligation exists. That's one question. You can also just go in with more questions. I'll bring a letter up. Give me a sec. But basically, that's it. You're just asking them for the facts. Same questions that Mark basically asked on his show. What facts do you rely on that the whatever act or the code is applicable to me? When Mark says the code, he's referring to the statutes, or as he was saying last night on the show, I think he mentioned it a couple of times. The Acts of Parliament, same thing. It's just a statute. And give me a sec. I'm going to bring this up because this is for challenging council tax, and I'll read out some of the questions to you, talking through them. If someone wants to ring in, and that helps keep my chain of thought going, because that helps. So, here we go. Let's look at the questions. Right, you got to remember, this is all to do with a cause of action still. There still has to be a valid claim against you. Now, the thing to ask is this a civil or a criminal claim they're making against you? And ask the HMRC that one. I mean, I'd recommend actually phoning them and making calls to these people. It's very difficult over here. Mark's having an easier time, it would seem, in America getting through to certain departments in the IRS, but it is an absolute bloody nightmare over here. And you know, I tried helping someone out a while back regarding these calls. We've got some recorded. We've got some brilliant admissions out of them, and I will be putting up a highlight edited down version of that because we had a couple of hours worth of recorded phone calls. But you know, I'd always recommend calling them, trying to get through to the department that's claiming to be bringing this claim against you, or the person who's meant to be acting as a witness against you, because they still have allegedly witnesses against you. Somebody has to sign this. Somebody has to be accusing you of owing this money, and get the admissions out of them. I mean, one of the main questions is, are you legally qualified, and or are you an expert in the interpretation and application of that particular act? Sometimes they'll say, yeah, I'm an expert. Oh, great. So what makes you an expert? I take it you're legally qualified then. And if they say no, are you telling me that you're not legally qualified to make legal determinations that I have an obligation to pay this money? So, blows them out of the water, that one. They don't know how to respond. A lot of the time, just like Mark, I've had a few of them put the phone down on me. So, I mean, one of the main questions is, are there any witnesses with first-hand personal knowledge? Now, under Section 32 of the Civil Procedure Rules, that's where it states the rules regarding first-hand witnesses with first-hand personal knowledge. So look that up. And under criminal, I believe it's Section 82 or 80 under the Criminal Procedure Act, I think, or the Criminal Procedure Rules. That's regarding, let me get it out, the issues regarding first-hand personal knowledge and that they're meant to have it. You can find them easy enough on the internet. The thing is with criminal, it seems to come under lots of different rules and lots of different acts. So we're doing a bit more digging into that, and we'll hopefully soon we'll put up a properly laid out sort of set of instructions regarding this stuff, you know, when you're dealing with criminal and civil, and where we can point to those sections and state, well, under this rule, this is what you claim about what first-hand personal knowledge means and what knowledge witnesses must have. But it's under Section 32 under civil, and I believe it's under one of the many sets of rules and regulations regarding criminal. It's under, I think it's 80 to 82, something like that. So look that up. Mark's got it narrowed down to one particular rule. I think it's Rule 602 over in the States, over in Arizona anyway. Because they have a codified constitution, if you like, and it means a lot of these rules and regulations are just laid out a lot more simply. And in this country, it's a lot more convoluted. It's all these rules and regulations are all over the place. You never know what statute or what set of rules to look at from one minute to the next because they're all over the place. And like I say, eventually we're getting narrowed down, and we'll be able to use the same line that Mark uses over in the States when he claims under Rule 602. You know, a witness is meant to have first-hand personal knowledge of the allegations. But we do have a very simple. We have the same thing over here, I can assure you. It's just a matter of us narrowing it down. Like I say, we'll put together that information that'll be put up on the website soon. Plus the wiki group as well. If you get onto Mark Stevens, I think it's called Adventures in Legal Land Wiki. We're going to start putting more and more information up there regarding the UK stuff as well. I've had problems with my computer. I just haven't got around to doing it all yet. So keep an eye on those sites and keep an eye on our site as well, nostateproject.co.nr, uk.co.nr. And as we start rebuilding the site again and we'll start getting all that information up and available to you. So, I say another question is there any admissible evidence that I am a taxpayer and have an obligation to file, i.e., make a tax return. When Mark talks about file, it's the same thing with us. It's called a tax return. You know, you're meant to file your tax returns by the end of every January every year. And it means exactly the same thing. Is there any admissible evidence? Now, what do we mean by admissible evidence? Well, is there any facts? You know, evidence means facts. Anything that proves there is an obligation, and that has to be admissible in a court. So, other than just making the accusation, where is the admissible evidence? Because there's certain evidence they may say isn't admissible, such as certain hearsay evidence and other types of evidence, such as recordings, apparently, and things like that. And there may be, there may be some evidence you're not aware of, you don't know about, because as Mark was saying last night, we have to give, because we're using the scientific method, we have to assume that there's a possibility that they could eventually actually bring evidence up. They could bring facts to bear to prove that there is an obligation. We have to accept that, that's under the scientific method. It could be there. But if they don't have it and they can't bring it up at that time, at that point in time when you're asking for it in front of the court, they have to drop the claim. That's according to how this is all meant to work. Because the burden of proof's on them. It's an adversarial system. We still keep having these idiots trying to claim this is not an adversarial system. Somebody sent me a parking ticket appeal that they've come through with, and I'll read this out to you. What he said to me, if I can dig it out. And it's from a chap it's from a chap that I've been talking to on Skype lately. I believe it's from Andy. Actually, this is the fella that I've been helping out with the HMRC. And as far as I'm aware, they've left him in peace. Now, they've been after him for over 10 years, though. But they've left him in peace, actually, regarding this. But I'll read this out to you if I can find it. But anyway, going back to the tax stuff, you got to remember, this is an adversarial system. It's not inquisitorial, it's adversarial. It means them versus you. And it states it on their paperwork. And they can't claim it's anything different. They can't claim it's not adversarial. Because why the hell would they be coming after you then? Why the hell would they be claiming you owe them money? It can't be any other way. The burden of proof's on them. That's why it has to be adversarial. And it has to be adversarial because of the Human Rights Act as well. Because if it's adversarial, you have to be presumed innocent. Those are the rules. That's what they claim, how this is meant to work. Copy selection. Right, here we go. I'll just read this out to you. But, this is how stupid these people are. And I've had this out of about 3 or 4 agents from the councils over the last year, or since last year, claiming this is not an adversarial system and they don't have to. The burden of proof doesn't lie with them either. I had a couple of them say. Here we go. So what they're saying is further representations were later made relating to the legality of the boroughs enforcing parking contraventions. The argument, now this is him using Mark's template to dismiss and the appeal paperwork that we used against the same one in Berkshire a little while back where they did actually drop the claim. This is a friend of mine who I helped out, and this is on Mark's site as well, and we've put up the evidence to show that the case got dropped under an appeal. But here's what they're saying. The arguments set out are lengthy and difficult to follow. Now, we laid this out, the paperwork, very easy to follow, stating that there must be a valid cause of action. For there to be a valid cause of action, it has to, at least to begin with, be an adversarial hearing. It's not adversarial because the adversary has to be claiming the violation of a legal right. If there's no violation of a legal right, they're not an adversary. They can't claim to be your adversary because they're not claiming that you did something wrong to them. It's all about rights and wrongs. And when you're dealing with civil, it's what's known as a civil wrong, especially when you get a parking ticket or when you're dealing with anything. It has to be classified as a civil wrong. Well, the thing is with wrongs is there has to be a right involved. Why? Because right and wrong are complementary terms. They go together hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. You can't have a wrong without a right being involved, and nothing can be right without a wrong being there somewhere. Or the two terms would never exist. Simple as that. what was I going to say? Yeah, sorry, right. The arguments laid out are lengthy and difficult to follow. The representations appear to be based on a lack of understanding of the basis of these proceedings. No, we know exactly what the basis and understanding the basis of proceedings are. It's all about a cause of action. If you haven't got one, you haven't got a claim. It's got Mr. So-and-so repeats his belief that the council has not shown a cause of action. It's not a belief, it's the opinions of the Supreme Court. And it states that they have to present a valid cause of action and all the elements with it. It's not a belief, it's the system's belief in that sense. It's the people who are coming after you. It's meant to be their belief, not ours. We couldn't care less. Our beliefs don't come into it. And the thing is, this is our understanding. This isn't a belief. It's our understanding of something. This is how we understand your system is meant to work. So why aren't you bothering to follow it? That's what it comes down to. And then it's got there is no adversarial proceeding. There is no plaintiff. I believe he should have put claimant there, but it doesn't matter. Or defendant. So he's got nothing to defend against. Well, then why does he have to make an appeal then? He's got nothing to defend against. It is a process for civil enforcement of penalties imposed for the contravention of the Road Traffic Act and is governed by the TMA Traffic Management Act 2004. And the regulations thereunder, having considered all the evidence submitted by the council, I am satisfied. This is a word they use also. I am satisfied that the contravention occurred. It's not a matter of whether an alleged contravention occurred or not. You have to show cause. That's why they call it a cause of action. So even if the contravention occurred, now show that to call it a contravention, you have to show the violation of a legal right. It all comes back to that again. You can't justify yourselves if this is all about disobedience. Because if it's all about disobedience, which is what they're actually accusing you of, this is all we ever deal with when we're in the courts, and they're barking and screaming at us. It's all that we dare to disobey and we dare to defy them. But the truth of the matter is, that puts us in a position of servitude. That makes you a slave. Why? Because you're being held to the will of somebody else, the will and opinion of somebody else. You can't justify using the level of violence that they do under that. And they know this. So when the system was created, and so many hundreds of years ago, they had to do it. Made it sound readable. They had to sell it and make it sound good. And this is what they did. They created a cause of action. Now, cause of action and the way the way it's meant to work, is actually not such an unreasonable system. What's unreasonable about it is the manner and nature in which it's enforced, which is under violence. But to turn around and say, well, there must be a victim isn't such a stupid thing. It actually makes a lot of sense. You can't justify bringing a claim against somebody unless there's a victim. So there you have it. And it's got here, Mr. So-and-so has never addressed that issue. Yeah, we have addressed that issue. The issue is you're claiming it's a contravention, we'll prove it. Where's the violation of a legal right? I find no validity or merit whatsoever in the legal arguments submitted. See, they're calling them legal arguments. They're not legal arguments. They're the opinions of the Supreme Court. This is how the system is meant to work. They're not arguments. If they're going to start claiming their arguments, when you show proof that none of this applies, because every Supreme Court around the world for the last few hundred years at least has stated that a cause of action is a necessary element of any alleged allegation, of any allegation, civil or criminal. Now, in our system, a cause of action is that they claim in England it only applies to civil. Well, that's fine. And that's the way they address it. But a cause of action still applies to criminal. Same thing still applies. It's just that they just changed the terminology a little bit. They just wanted to get semantic about it, and it's called a specific cause of action because a charge, or that's what a charge is. It's another word for a charge. A charge is something specific they're coming after you for, as they call it. So that's all what a charge is. A charge is a specific cause of action. So don't get the two confused. They mean exactly the same thing. They're just arguing semantics, and they're just hiding this information from you. And a lot of the time, the solicitors and that who actually bring this stuff against you, the prosecutors, don't even know that difference, don't even understand that. They simply state, no, a cause of action is civil and a charge is criminal, that's it. Well, a cause of action is it's showing cause. It's showing it's showing that you caused something for them to justify bringing a claim against you. And like I say, the cause is you had to cause the violation of somebody's rights, allegedly. So there has to be a victim. There you go. That's what you caused. You caused somebody to be a victim or a group of people to be a victim. And there you go. And now they can justify coming after you. Otherwise, they're just holding you to their arbitrary will and opinion. That's called slavery. So, the penalty charge is still due, blah, blah, blah. So there you go. So, I've got to get back to him on this, but I've just read a little bit of this out. But you can see this is their attitude. They totally misaddressed the issue themselves. They seem to act as if they think they know what they're talking about. The truth is, they haven't got a clue. That's totally flawed logic. What's going on now? And what I did, I ended up writing out a 5-6 page notice to deal with parking tickets, where it lays it out. I've decided I'm not going to just put. Well, we used it as an experiment, and actually, that actual notice we put together was to do with parking tickets just in this country, and it was based off of Mark's application to dismiss. And I just added extra content to it, where I laid out what a cause of action is, why a cause of action must be stated, and gave the grounds why based on their opinions. I even got a ruling from the former head of PTAS, where he states that a parking contravention is a civil wrong. I've actually got him admitting it. It was in what was it? It was on the judicial website, one of the judiciary's websites, and it was to do with PTAS. It's to do with, it was meant to be part of a training paper to be used for adjudicators for doing appeals. And it actually stated it there. A parking contravention is a civil wrong which incurs a penalty, blah, blah, blah. And off it went. And so there you go. So if you're going to call something a civil wrong, well, you can't call something a civil wrong without a right being involved. That means it's a cause of action. And a cause of action means that the party making the accusation must be prejudicially affected by what you've done, by what you caused. And if in this case, where they bring a criminal charge against you, where they're claiming to be acting on behalf of everyone else, it still means the same thing. You've got to claim now the people you're claimed to be acting on behalf of were prejudicially affected by my act, my alleged act. And so, and that's what you're dealing with. People have got to get this into their heads. This is how the system is meant to operate. And we're simply using it back against them because this has become so corrupted and so convoluted, where now they treat you like with little children, and they're simply just bringing an allegation against you, and what they're actually accusing you of and the way they're treating you is you dared to disobey us, you dared to defy us. And whenever you're in court and you're in front of these people and you watch this, you watch the way they act towards you, that's exactly what's going on. That's what you're being accused of. And there's nothing being put to the test. They're meant to be put. The reason you're meant to be going to court is so the prosecution's evidence is the thing being put to the test. It's not you that's being put on trial. It's the prosecution that's being put on trial and their evidence, not you. But this has become so twisted and corrupt that that's exactly. But it's obviously the complete opposite way around. But that's what you have to remember, and that's what you have to keep in mind. This is how their system, this is how they claim their system's meant to work. We'll call them on it. That's all we ever do. So, like I say, regarding this, even with councils, and I've had this out of the HMRC as well, they claim that it's not an adversarial proceeding. Well, then you don't have a claim then, because we have plenty of case law that states that there is an adversarial, there must be an adversarial hearing. I'll actually dig it out and I'll read this to you. Hang on. Because there's some case law that I found not too long ago where it actually states that we have the right to an adversarial hearing. and it claims that you have to be presumed innocent until proven guilty as well. And the thing is obviously under criminal, you have to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Well, if that's the case, they must presume you're therefore innocent of every element. And that's why we use it as a question when you go into court. You ask a judge, am I presumed innocent of this alleged offence? The judge has to say yes. Well, then you say, great. So if that's the case, then therefore you're presumably innocent of every element, aren't you? Now, if they understand what that question means, this is why they normally hit the roof. Because if they're going to presume you innocent of every element, one of the elements of that alleged allegation is the applicability of the law or the statute that they're trying to bring against you. They cannot presume it applies to you because they must presume you innocent of it not applying to you. And it's the same with civil. That's under criminal. But civil is the same. All it means is under Article 6 of the Human Rights Act, which they claim they have to abide by, doesn't mean any of this is any more applicable to you than the tax law or whatever other act they're bringing against you. But this is how you use their own rules and regulations back against them. Under Article 6, it states that you must be presumed innocent, but it equally applies to civil as well. And it states, you must be informed as to your obligations under civil, blah blah blah. So what it means is that you must be presumed non-liable until proven liable. So it's the same as being guilty until proven guilty, not guilty until proven guilty. You must be under civil. You must be presumed non-liable. Civil, whenever they start talking about what's civil, it's simply something you're liable for. Whereas criminal, it's something that you're guilty of. And it's just word games at the end of the day. But this is how they determine it. So you're either guilty of committing an act, therefore, you either owe money or, you did commit, you did do harm to somebody or you didn't. Now that's what you're establishing. Did it really happen? Did you really cause harm to somebody? But as you know, when you get in a speeding ticket or something like that, you haven't done any harm to anybody. It's all this alleged harm or this alleged crime against society only exists in their head. And it all goes away once you pay them some money. That's the magical thing about this. You've got to remember. So, I'll say that's the way to look at it with civil and criminal. Don't look at it as, it doesn't apply to civil because the considered innocent bit doesn't, is only on the criminal side. You just simply change that to non-liable. You must be presumed non-liable. And that's the thing with, and therefore, if you're not going to be presumed non-liable, then they can't presume you liable under that alleged act. They can't presume an obligation exists until it's been proven to exist. It's one thing making an allegation that you have an obligation to do something or pay something to them. It's another thing actually proving it and showing the evidence. And all these people ever do is bring an allegation. They never bring any evidence supporting that. And you have to be able to, in your mind, you have to be able to differentiate between that and understand it, and know that when they're in court and they're coming out of all this waffle, don't get trapped into this thing of just because they've just gone on the 5-minute rant, therefore there must be something in it because they wouldn't have been talking for so long. Doesn't matter how long they've been waffling for. Give me the facts. Show me the real evidence. That is the allegation that you claim. I have an obligation to pay this tax. Now show me the facts proving it. You're claiming there's an obligation here, now show it, now prove it. Well, if they refer to the act, well, what facts do you rely on that's applicable to me? And if they come out with a usual waffle, well, it applies to everybody, which is what 99% of the time we always hear them say the same thing. That's not facts. That's just an opinion that you say it applies to everybody. That's like me pulling the Bible out and saying everybody in the world's a Christian because that book says so. Would that make it true? Of course not. It's just my opinion that I believe it does. And if I stick a gun in someone's face, I might turn around and say, yeah, all right, fine, I'm Christian. Whatever you say, mate. But does that make it so? Does that make it a fact? Of course not. So it's no different when they're actually writing all these laws and they start saying, well, it applies to everybody. Well, show me facts, prove how it applies. And the way it applies to you, like I was saying, whenever you ask a bureaucrat a question, always know the answer to that question. The way the law applies to people is a statute allegedly creates an obligation or a duty. They call it a legal duty. Same thing as an obligation. You have a legal obligation or duty to do or not to do something. So how factually does it apply? By force. And what factually is it? It's a written instrument. A written instrument is a written will of the legislator, so it's nothing more than a written will and opinion of a group of people who call themselves legislators, and it's going to be forced against you. That's how it applies. Now, here's the thing. Can an obligation be valid when it's forced? If you was involved in any other type of activity in your life and somebody stuck a gun to your head and said, you have an obligation to do this because I'm sticking a gun in your face, would that create a valid obligation? Of course not. In any other walk of life, that's ridiculous. And the definition of a crime is an involuntary human relationship. Well, statutes applying to people allegedly is the result of an involuntary human relationship. That does not create a valid obligation or duty on anybody. But that's how they claim. Well, they don't even claim it applies that way. That's what the truth is. This is what they don't like admitting to. So when you're asking how does it apply to me, you know it's being done under. The only way you can show this applies to me if you're telling me the truth is it's nothing more than somebody else's will and opinion sticking a gun in your face and telling me it applies to me. You're forcing my compliance at the barrel of a gun. That's the only way this thing applies to me. It doesn't apply to me any other way. There is no valid obligation there whatsoever. And that's the truth. That's how the law allegedly, well, that's how we know it applies to, because it can't be proven to apply to you any other way. It's not a contract. All this stuff that keeps being thrown about under trust law and all this stuff with Dean Clifford and, the freeman stuff and all that. This is all contract. Everything's contract. It's codswallop. How can something be a contract or under some sort of trust when it's forced, it's coerced? Because these people can't operate under anything else. They cannot make anything apply to you or force you to comply with something unless they're using violence or coercion against you. That's it. And this is what I don't like having to admit to, because you cannot prove that a valid obligation or duty can be created out of force, out of coercion. That's it. It's like I say, know the answers, because you know they're not going to want to ever own up to this stuff. Even if they knew the answer, they're going to do their damn best to avoid ever actually telling people the truth. Because if they did tell you the truth, oh great, so you just admitted then that the only reason any of this applies to me is simply because of violence, because of the violence you people would threaten against me, and that's it. But they can't claim it to be valid. That's the thing. This is where the whole legitimacy of the legal system falls apart, because you cannot claim any of this is legitimate or valid when it's all being done under threat, coercion, and violence. That's it. So, it's not coming up now. I'll read this out in a bit. Hang on, it was the Queen versus something. I can find this particular case. Anyone else still wants to call in? You can get me on Skype. I know one chap wanted to call in regarding a little issue having in place at the moment, and so did somebody else. Soul. If they want to call in still, give me a sec. I'm just going to get back to them. I'm going to find this case. So hopefully that's made a bit more sense. Me waffling on again. There we go. Right, just sent him a message. Right, so that's one of the things you can use against them. Like I say, when you're in court, it's to understand what and why you're asking these questions, and the reason is because you know they're not going to want to give you those types of answers, even if they know them. A lot of the time they don't. Sometimes it's a wake-up call for a lot of these people. I was on a call a while back with the chap that I've been dealing with over the last couple of years over my council tax issue. And I still haven't got a liability order against me yet, and I still haven't gone back to court. This is about 18 months now it's been going on at least. And he said to me, well, why is it other people pay if you don't believe there's an obligation to pay them, well then why does everyone else pay then? I said the only reason other people pay is because they're frightened of what would happen to them if they don't. they would be thrown in a cage, or be put in front of the courts. And most people don't understand the system; they're frightened of it. They simply pay out of fear. And he couldn't believe that answer I gave him. He went to me, "Is that what you really believe?" I said, "Well, yeah. It's the only reason I ever paid in the past. The reason I'm not paying now is because I've woke up and got the answers for myself, and I know what I'm dealing with." Said, but before that, I was the same as everybody else. I paid simply out of the fear of what would happen to me if I didn't. Are you telling me that's what creates an obligation on somebody, or why somebody knows that they have an obligation simply because of what you'll threaten them with? There's a difference between saying to somebody you know there's an obligation to pay, you've damn well got to pay this. No, it ain't a matter of I know there's an obligation to pay, so I know what you people will do to me if I don't pay. That's what I know for sure. It certainly doesn't constitute a fact, or you certainly can't twist that into claiming that, therefore, I know there's an obligation to pay. No, it's totally different thing. So anyway, right, so it's about you being a taxpayer as well. Are the opinions that I am a taxpayer and have an obligation to pay tax irrefutable? I've talked about this before. When they claim something's irrefutable, it means it cannot be challenged. If it cannot be challenged, you can't have an adversarial hearing. They have no grounds to take you to court because they claim, if they're stating it's irrefutable, they have nothing they need to prove as far as they're concerned. Well, if that's the case, then you've got no grounds to take somebody to court. You take somebody to court to prove something, not to force a court to bully someone into paying. The court's meant to hear the evidence, and the claimant's meant to be the one bringing the evidence of their allegations forward. You don't have to do a damn thing. But I've had them actually admit this to me more than once. It is irrefutable. You have to pay. But if it's irrefutable, then why are you threatening me with court, or trying to drag me into the court, and I can't answer that? Just admitted it's irrefutable. If it's irrefutable, it can't be argued. You've got nothing to prove. So why are we going to court? Are you simply just using the court as bully boys against me to get me to pay? Or are you actually going to put any evidence in front of a judge or magistrate? And that's the bind you put them in. Because, like I say, they're so arrogant, these people. A lot of the time, they'll just come out like, yeah, everybody's got to pay. Everybody knows that. It's irrefutable. You can't argue it. But if you can't argue it, then you haven't got grounds to take me to court. And that means, why aren't you just getting a bailiff knocking your door down now? So, next question I use is, you can flat out ask them, does the So and So Act, the Income Tax Act, or the Local Government Finance Act, or the Local Government Act, that's deal with council tax, does it create or impose an obligation or legal duty upon me, yes or no? If they claim it does, state, oh really, what facts have you got to prove that? And how did it create an obligation or duty on me? The how is, it's an opinion. The why is, well, somebody wants your money. Somebody wants to milk you dry. That's why they're doing it. They want to do it because they want to control you. And the when is, well, as soon as they can get their mitts into you, as soon as you buy an house, usually. So, does such an obligation, should it factually exist, this is another question asked, require my voluntary cooperation, yes or no? Now this blows apart the whole issue of all this trust law and freeman stuff. Ask them if it requires your voluntary cooperation. Because if they claim no, it doesn't, well then, how can you claim that? Are you claiming that creates a? Are you claiming that an involuntary obligation can be, or an obligation is valid when it's involuntary? How can they answer that? That blows that totally exposes them for what they are. You cannot claim there's a valid obligation when it's forced. That's it. So, what's stuck in my teeth? I think. So, just little questions like that. It starts to pick apart their little Ponzi scheme. Oh, and I've just lost that question right there. So another question is, can you provide me with evidence that it applies, that the so and so act applies to me? Can you provide me with evidence? This is when they turn around and say, oh yeah, we'll send you a copy of the act then. Or write a letter saying to your section so and so this act. That is not evidence that it applies to you. That is simply the act. Now show evidence that it applies. Now you've got to prove that it applies. Like I say, it's like me slapping a Bible down in front of you and claiming you're all Christians because I'll say so. Now show evidence that book applies to anybody first. Then you can claim it. Well, you can claim it all you want, but you can't just make it arbitrary. It's got to be based on something tangible. Can you provide me with a factual timeline to show how, why, where, and when the alleged obligation was created? Ask for a factual timeline. Now, they may say, well, that's when your house applied, or it was when you bought your house. Well, okay, fair enough. Show me the facts. The fact is, it was just somebody's opinion that it started applying to you as soon as you moved into the house. Now, the one they had me with was when I moved into my property. Unbeknownst to council, and I had to fill it out to tell them that I was living there. And they said, well, there you go. You admitted to it. I said, are you telling me because I signed that bit of paper that I agreed to it? I agreed to this obligation. I went, yeah. I said, really? What if I hadn't filled that form in? Well, we'd have brought fines against you and this, that, and the other. Well, again, you're just bringing force against me if I don't do something. How can you keep telling me that an obligation gets created simply based on grounds that you're fault? You either force me to do it or I'm coerced. I'm coerced, or you'll threaten me with something. So, I'll say this is how you start picking it apart. This is how you start to show that there's nothing there but false violence and opinion behind this stuff. And it's just opinions built on other opinions. They've got no facts behind this. They've got nothing tangible. And a fact is something that's measurable, remember. It's something where you can take it from its source to its ultimate conclusion or end. That's what a fact is, put simply. It's a form of measurement, or it's something that can be measured. It doesn't matter if it's tangible or intangible. You can still take it from its beginnings. What created it? Where did it come from? Was it created subjectively, or is it something that's natural? Is it something that's inherently natural in the world? It's subjective. It's empirical. You can see it, you can taste it, touch it, and whatever. So, I'll say you can put forward some very simple questions regarding that, and ask them: is this in the nature? If it's criminal or civil, ask if it's in the nature. Especially if they're claiming it's civil, I'll ask if it's in the nature of the contract or a tort. For it to be a tort, for it to be civil, it can only fall under tort or contract. If you don't believe me, look it up on Wikipedia. Look up civil wrong. Look up the word civil wrong under Wikipedia, or civil law, and it states, or a cause of action even. Look up cause of action and it will say it. The cause of action under civil must be, therefore, falls into three categories: tort, contract, and trust. A trust is just contract. It's a contract anyway. Any form of trust is some form of contract. So it's tort or contract. There's no point, making an issue out of the trust stuff. And like I say, all the other mob like to jump on that and try and make it something that it isn't. It's contract. Period. There's no point arguing about it. So that's it. If it's criminal, when it's in the nature of a tort, it means they're claiming that you've done harm to somebody absent a contract. That's all the tort means. So if it's criminal and they're claiming you've committed a crime against everybody, well, they're claiming you've done harm. Well, under criminal, apparently that's got nothing to do with contract. So there you go. So it's in the nature of a tort. You can't claim it's a tort. It's in the nature of a tort. It's the same thing. It means the same thing. They're claiming you've done harm absent a contract, regardless. Doesn't matter how serious they want to treat it. That's what they're claiming. So, and another thing is ask that is your claim or complaint, because if it's a complaint civil, is it consistent with Human Rights Act 1998? And the reason you're asking that is because, like I say, according to their rules and regulations, they have to comply with that act. And what's the Human Rights Act all about? the protection of human rights or the protection of rights, legal rights. So if it's factually consistent, great. Therefore, you have to be accusing me of violating somebody's human rights, because that now becomes the purpose and the purpose and direction the court has to take. If they're bringing a claim again, it's the same with them. They have to ensure that they're not violating your alleged rights under that act. These are their rules around. Don't look at the Human Rights Act as an act or something that actually gives you rights. It doesn't. It's simply just another rule book that they're meant to play by, that they don't. Use it against them, get them to contradict themselves on it. Don't think of it as something where you have rights. You don't. We don't have rights. They don't exist. They're subjective. They only exist in your head. You can't prove they exist. What you have is life, liberty, and property. Well, liberty in terms of freedom, limited, highly limited. But these are things that are empirical. They're objective. You can prove they exist. And that you can't prove rights exist. And people get upset about that, but tough. That's life. Those are the facts. That's the truth. Get over it. There's no point making an issue over something that you can't prove factually exists. Because, like I say, when you're dealing with these people, if you start getting into subjective arguments with them, they're going to win every time. They don't care what your opinion is. They don't care what you believe something is or what your understanding is of something. It's what they want to impose on you that matters. It's their opinions. That's it. It's like I say, they can't argue the facts. The facts are, well, the truth is what it is. The truth's unchanging. It can't be. It doesn't matter how much you want. You might want reality to conform to your opinion. You have to let your opinion conform to reality, whether you like it or not. And all this nonsense I hear sometimes, some people start talking. You can create your own reality in this world. No, you bloody well can't. You have to fit with reality. Reality is what it is for whatever that means. Reality is the world we see around us, and it won't change for you. It won't change just because, you in your mind want to make it something different or make it something that it isn't. You have to accept reality for what it is in this respect, anyway. I'm not saying we can't do, wonderful things with our minds, but, when it comes to this sort of thing, you got to stick to, and call it God's law and call it whatever, but you got to stick to the reality that we see. What's there? It's whether you like it or not, whether God exists or not, or whether this is all just a wee accident in the universe. It is what it is, and it had to have happened exactly the same way. It had to have happened the way it did because it had to. It had to be this way. Can't be any different. It couldn't be any different. The world can't work any different whether God exists or not. It would have to have still been put together and work this and that same way. Anyway, let's me get on my soapbox. Right. So getting back to the tax agents, you actually want to go after the agent, the one who's actually made the determination that you're allegedly have an obligation or you're liable to pay tax. Ask for them by name. If they say we can't name this person, say, well, who's meant to be the witness against me then? And a lot of the time, this all gets passed around from department to department. You can never get a name from anybody. If that's the case and they can't bring a witness against you, they can't bring anybody with first-hand personal knowledge, they can't bring anybody who's got can make a legal determination, can actually present facts that you have an obligation, it all falls apart for them. But they try and, like I say, that they try and make this as difficult for you as possible. Give me a check. I'm just going to see anyone else going to be calling in. Waiting on the number or call to come through. Right, okay. I'm just waiting to see. I'll ask them to call me if someone wants to come on. Give me a sec. Can you call me? Right. Okay, I'm just waiting on a call to come through then, hopefully. From Seoul. See what happens. I'm not very good at all this computery stuff. I'm not very techie minded, I suppose. Oh, hang on, they're just getting back to me now. See if they can call me. Okay, hang on. Yep, right, they'll be coming through in a minute. What I'm going to do is I'll bring them in on the other computer, and you should be able to hear them through my headset still, and hopefully it'll still be reasonably clear. Because at the moment, till we get till I can get the software set up where I can actually stream the show properly for myself. At the moment I'm still having problems bringing in people on Skype, but I can still do it. It's just I have to do it via two computers rather than the one. So that's just one of those things. So, okay, I'll just wait to hear back from them on that call. So,
hello, this is Reed, man.
Hello.
Hello, I've been listening to what you've been saying. Very interesting, lots of it. I've got a bit of a problem myself at the minute with I think they're trying to criminalise me.
Oh, okay.
You were saying about pre-section. I've just had they tried to serve a notice on me. They shoved it into like the letterbox in between because I held it short after they tried to post it through the window. It says Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, Investigation of Protected Electronic Information, pre-Section 49 notice. Well, I only got this after they'd come round and tried, when I wasn't in, and spoke to my son, my son, and he came around 4 times, and about the second time, they wrote it on a piece of paper asking for PIN codes and security codes for my phone that they took off me in an interview. Which they told me in the interview they'd said that they've got all modern technology to be able to take off to get on my phone, and so I just left it at that.
Right. Okay.
Now they're saying they can't get on my phone, and I've got to supply them with PIN codes and security codes. Well, I'm a bit of a technophobe myself, so I've no idea what they're even asking of me. And I phoned up to tell them that, and then they said they was going to serve this notice on me, which I said, well, that's a bit unfair because by you serving that notice on me, you're putting me in a position that I can't give you that. So why are you serving that notice on me?
Right. Okay. Well, what else does it say then? I mean, it just states those, it just quotes those acts, does it, or does it actually state something else that's of any use?
I don't know. I can read the whole notice out if you want, if you'd like.
Well, we'll try not to give away too much personal detail, but yeah, I mean, if you can read some of it, it gives us an idea what we're dealing with.
It says, this notice is an early request for an electronic passcode or encryption key. Failure to comply may result in the police starting a formal Section 49 procedure against you. Failure to comply with the Section 49 notice is an offence and may result in prosecution. What they're saying is an offence to fail to comply with the Section 49 notice, nothing about the pre-Section 49 notice. If you are in any doubt about the effect of this notice or how to comply with it, you should consult a professional legal advisor. And it says 2, name recipient, disclose your requirements. Pursuant to Section 49 of the Regulation of Investigative Powers Act 2000, the 2000 Act, I hereby require you to disclose a key or any supporting information to make the information intelligible. The information to which this notice relates is description of relevant protected information. This must be in a sufficient detail to enable the person given notice to be clear about the protected information to which it relates and to enable identification of any or all keys, including any session keys, which would enable the data to be put into an intelligible form. Reason for notice. I believe that this notice is necessary in the interests of national security / for the purpose of preventing or detecting crime / in the interests of the economic well-being of the United Kingdom, include brief summary of case / investigation, and there's nothing there, where a person gives, where Where a person given a Section 49 notice knowingly fails to make the disclosure required, they commit an offence. If the disclosure required is necessary in the interest of national security or in cases involving child indecency, they may be convicted on indictment, that sounds American, to a maximum of 5 years imprisonment, or in any other case 2 years. On summary conviction, they may be liable to a maximum 6-month term of imprisonment or a fine not exceeding the statutory maximum, or both. Date issued 28th of February 2013 by, I won't say his name.
Okay. Well, I mean, it comes down to the same thing. What facts do they have to prove that that applies to you? Oh, give me a sec. I'm just I've got a soul here who wants to call in, and now I can't take the call. Or can I bring them? Can you bring them into the call? Do you know?
I don't mind being quiet while you. Can I bring them?
Okay, give me a sec. I'll just put you on hold a minute, or if you can just call me back in a couple of minutes, and then I'll bring them into the call.
You can put me on hold because I've got 3 landline minutes.
Right. Okay. Hold on. Let me see if I can somehow bring them into the call myself. Oh, I hate this. I hate this technical stuff. Right. Give me a sec. Right. That's cool. Oh, come here. Oh, sorry, folks. It's live radio for you when you're trying to do something. Nope.
Oh,
There we go. Right.
With this notice I just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
it all the way through, it on this state, it's like a threat, really, isn't it? Because this is a pre-Section 49 notice, but all the statements on there are just like threats of a 49 notice.
Yeah, so they haven't actually put through an actual that actual notice to you yet. So you can either wait for that notice to come through if you want, or just send them a letter. I say asking these questions. You know, what facts do you rely on to prove that? You know, write down that act and the section that they're quoting. You know, what facts do you rely on that's applicable to me? And then obviously asked if the police officer whose name is on that is actually acting as claiming to be a witness against you. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what roughly is this to do with? What is it? You know, what was the original arrest about? Why did they take your phone off you to begin with?
It was a cannabis grow.
Right. Okay.
For my own personal medical use.
Okay. So what, did they break into your house and take those off you then?
Well, they knocked on the door and I opened the door because I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong, and they kind of manipulated things, said things that I weren't quite aware of, and managed to get in. Then once they were in, at one point, I asked them to leave, and they started to leave, but they didn't actually leave. They stayed in the doorway, and then they started to quote things. They started to make threats against me, and because I wasn't fully aware of my full... Well, I know their system's a load of rubbish, but because I wasn't aware of my full rights, they ended up coming into the house, about 6 of them, and then they proceeded to slash my tents up, took all my equipment away and everything, so and took all my medicine. So
right, okay. Well, I mean, what you could do is we could make a phone call next week if you want, or next week to the police if you like. Have they got like an address with a phone number on there?
The only phone number they've given me so far is the police officer who put the bail notice together. They've only given me his mobile number. The only other way of doing it is by phoning Mansfield Police Station.
Right. Okay. Well, we could make a quick phone call to them and just ask some questions regarding this. Um, but
Yes,
another
please.
way of dealing with it is simply just to send a letter. But I mean, it's down to you how you want to go about dealing with this. I mean, have you got a court date or anything like that coming up yet?
No, I've got to go back to the police station to answer the bail sheet that's not even got a signature on it on Tuesday. Before I got this pre-section 49 notice, I actually phoned them up to ask them how it was going because I've already explained my position as I'm a herbalist. I'm looking and researching into the plant anyway, and because I use it for myself. And I was just trying to get about a year's supply for myself, so I didn't have to worry about growing it. I mean, because while you're growing, you're kind of stuck in one place. You can't do much travelling around. And when I phoned them up to ask about how the case was going, the next day is when they came round asking for my phone details, or PIN codes and security codes, it says. And like I said, I phoned him up the next day and said I haven't got a clue what he's on about. And then I got this pre-section 49 notice that evening.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, that's the best we can do is we'll make we'll send we can send a letter off, and we can make a call to them next week, and we just ask a few questions. But I mean, I'm surprised yet you haven't even got a court date. I mean, if they're making an investigation, I mean, it comes down to the fact of can they prove that you have to have an obligation to know what these codes are? I mean, for all you know, they could have done something to the phone that could have put the phone back to its original factory settings, which can happen with phones, and you could end up with a new set of codes that you don't know, you never knew were there. That's happened before with a phone of mine, and I didn't know what the codes were to get into it, so I didn't have a clue. I just used the phone as normal. I never did have a PIN code on it or anything, but something was done to the phone, and it ended up resetting back to old factory settings, and I didn't have a clue how to use it. I couldn't get back into the phone again to ever use it again. I think I had to take it down to a shop to go and get it fixed, all that. So I could have done something similar to your phone for all you know, especially if you don't understand, especially if you don't know if there was a code on the phone to begin with. But yeah, I mean, we can just ask them a few questions and, let's see what they come back with. They could get quite nasty. They could get quite aggressive in terms of, in terms of when you're out, because they just think you're just trying to hide things from them, or you're just trying to be awkward and whatnot. So it's down to you how you want to play it. But I mean, certainly if you end up being taken to court at some point in the future, I can help you out with that, with dealing with that. Same thing again, regardless of what they're accusing you of, especially if it's criminal, they have to prove beyond reasonable doubt, and they have to first of all prove these so-called codes, statutes are applicable to you to begin with. So that's what you stick to, and like I say, it comes down to the cause of action, or in criminal, the specific cause of action. They have to have a valid claim against you. They have to prove you violated somebody's rights. I mean, I take it they haven't accused you of any such thing at this point. Yeah.
No, they all they've done is they've put down. They didn't even put cultivation on the bail form. All they've done is possession and intent to supply. But that they told me the actual words were, well, that's only if they could find proof and evidence on my phone, which I told them there wasn't any proof or evidence on there. And now they're saying I've got to give them a code, so it's like they can't. It's like they think that they can't do me there, so they're trying to throw something else on me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, intent. They have to prove intent, and they're asking about whether you. So they're claiming intent by. They can't turn around and say, well, we've caught you actually selling the stuff. That proves intent. No, it proves you sold something. Doesn't prove intent, does it? In a sense of, they're not asking for proof that you've actually sold any of this stuff. They're looking for proof that you intend to sell it. And how can they show proof of that? Because the only proof of that is in your head.
Yeah.
And how can I get that out of you? So that's the point. That's the thing, yeah. So I mean, I'll help you out as best I can. But I'll say, if you want to we can make a phone call next week to them. and
That'd be appreciated.
we'll ask them a few questions. But I mean, at this point, you're still only in the investigatory stage, aren't you?
Yeah,
They're just investigating it. They're not actually they haven't actually brought anything against you yet. They could just drop it at the last minute. Is this the first time they've ever come after you for anything like this?
yeah, first time totally in my life.
Okay.
Also, I read that under medical grounds, and I've got a Small's node, which is like a little chip out my spine on the
Yeah.
vertebra, which is so it's pain. And I find that I don't want to take any of the anti-inflammatories that the doctors and everything give you. Are really nasty. I tried them about 20 odd years ago, and I didn't agree with them at all.
Yeah.
So I find cannabis really helps for that. And I've been reading that seeing as the government are now funding pharmaceutical companies now producing cannabis oil with the name of Sativex, that you can actually grow your own, because basically if they're for medical uses, and if you have got, as long as it's only your own stash, and they also said that you can also pass it on to other people that have got a medical necessity and got written medical reasons why they need it. So
Yeah.
I didn't even know about that before. I was just thinking of keeping it all to myself. But now I've read that, I'm thinking, well, if I ended up with what's spare, then I think I would actually start passing it round, and that way I suppose I'd even start driving around to give it to people that were in need, that were ill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, irrespective of any of that, what they claim, how you can and can't use it, they still have to prove. Like I say, they still have to bring a valid charge against you, and that still means a violation of somebody's rights. So regardless of what they write in their sacred writ, if you like, they still have to prove you violate somebody's rights. It's a criminal charge. It has to be proven beyond reasonable doubt. They have to prove beyond reasonable doubt any of these acts apply to you. They have to presume you're innocent, of course. They can't presume you're guilty. Therefore, as we know, when they go into court, these things are already predetermined. They seem to think, well, we caught you with a plant, that's it, you're guilty. And no judge ever takes the stand that you're actually guilty, innocent. But they're not assuming you're innocent. It's not an argument of whether they found these plants in your home or not. It's an issue of, do they have proof to prove that because of that you caused the violation of somebody's rights? That's what that's what you're guilty of. Not the fact that you had these plants in your home. That's irrelevant. They have to prove by you doing that the act caused what it did. So, and that's what you need to keep in your head, and that's what you need to remember. That's what they've got to prove. That's what's being put on trial.
Yeah.
It's the police and their evidence that are being put on trial, not you.
Yeah, that's the way I've ended up twisting it, really, because they've made me look and do a lot of research, which is why I got little information about that, and I've been looking into Maxim's laws and quite a lot of things. And there's somebody, because I've been wanting to do herbalism, been practicing kind of herbalism on and off for about 20 years, as the bet suggests, I suppose, and just learning slowly and progressively. A lot of it is self-learned, where you've tried things on myself and before I pass it on to somebody else, and I'd recommend somebody else who does it. And it's just as I'm getting closer to actually going self-employed to do this, it seems like they're starting to make all herbal medicines illegal. Which is
anything that's any good for us, they want to make it illegal now. They just want us to eat all the crap and take all the nasty pills they want to produce, and anything that's of any benefit to us health-wise, they want to make it illegal.
Yeah.
As such. Yeah, we know about all this with Codex Alimentarius and now this Agenda 21 or whatever it is. It's meant to be coming in. It's all part of their scheme. And that's the thing. I mean, they were all over the whole weed issue and marijuana and that. That was all over that in the early 1900s, wasn't they? It was mainly the oil industry that wanted to ban it because it basically it made conventional oil, as we know, petroleum and that, obsolete because these plants have 1,000,001 different uses, and one of them was we could use it as a form of fuel. And the petroleum companies, the oil companies, didn't like that, and they were the ones that lobbied governments in the early 1900s to make it illegal, ban this plant as best they could, because they realised it was something that could grow anywhere on the planet. It was so abundant, and they would lose all control. And that's what it's about. That's what these people are all about. And this is why they made this alleged plant. Why they demonised it the way they did. It was all about money and control at the end of the day. It's got nothing to do with them claiming this is for our benefit, our health. They're doing it to protect us and all this crap. It was to protect themselves and no one else.
I heard it was the cotton industry as well. Cotton producers that wanted it banned because it creates a really, really good material that's strong, hard working, wherein don't crease very easily.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, a car got built completely out of he built one. The bodywork, I suppose the engine was, conventional, but the bodywork and the actual fuel it ran all came from those. Yeah, and they apparently they can make clothing out of it. The clothing lasts for donkey's years. It's one of these things where I suppose they couldn't unless they manipulate the material. It's very difficult now to most things that we buy, especially in the Western world. They have what's called inbuilt obsolescence, don't they? When they make sure things aren't going to last as long as they should or could do. They try and put a limit on everything, on how long something will last for, and they do that with everything we use now, electrical or mechanical. They only build things to last for so long, even though they're more than capable of actually living, working way past, the times they allow it. I mean, one of the classic ones is obviously light bulbs and computer systems, printers, all things like that. So yeah, I mean that's what. Obviously, this whole agenda spreads to a lot of things. It's not just around weed, but it's one of those sort of magical plants that we've got in the world, and it's just its uses are. It's still, it's probably many more uses we could find for it if only we was ever, going to be left in peace to bloody find out. Let science do its thing.
A really good quality paper could stop chopping the trees down.
Yeah, that's it. So, we know why these people are doing this. They can't claim this has anything to do with protection of the public. And the thing is obviously there's some case law as well. I mean, I'll give you this before you go up in front of these people and go to court. There's some case law where it states that the police have no duty to protect an individual from the criminal acts of another. So if they're claiming it's a criminal offence and then they claim they're doing this to protect people, we'll stuff that under the face. So according to you people, you don't have any obligation to protect anybody from a criminal act of somebody else anyway. So don't claim this is all about protection. Sorry?
They did a criminal act, really. The way they behaved. And
they're the criminals, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's a bunch of criminals trying to accuse you of being a criminal. It's just, pot, kettle and black. But I mean, so I'll help you out as best I can. At the moment, there's very little we can do because you're just stuck in this investigatory stage. The thing is obviously you don't want to backlash against you, and that's what you got to sit down and think about how you want to go about dealing with this. I mean, if you've got nothing on that phone that you're not worried about them seeing, and you can get the part, or just tell them straight, you're not technically minded. You've got no idea if there is or isn't a password on that phone, and leave it at that. And if they claim where they're going to bring an offence against you, well, how can, like I say, if they bring an offence against you, they've got a claim by you not supplying this alleged data they want. It's somehow going to violate their rights.
Yeah.
So that's what they're going to be accusing you of. They claim it's an offence, all right, by you not telling them this information. Somehow you violated another set of rights, especially if they claim it's an offence, i.e. a criminal act. Now somehow you've committed a crime against everybody else. That includes me talking to you now. Apparently you've committed an offence against me and everybody listening to the show today. Okay. So we're one of your victims, but that's how bonkers this is. That's how bonkers the system is. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's it. You're good to go as far as I'm concerned. You said sorry. That's fair enough. But this is how stupid it is, isn't it? And that's what you're up against. That's what you're dealing with. But I'll say you got to sit down and think about what you want to do. because I say that there can be a backlash. These people can get nasty, and they can make matters worse for you. So it's not that you're chickening out or anything like that. You've just got to think about this sensibly and say, because at the end of the day, it's all about damage control. If you end up being taken to court, you obviously want to get this matter dropped. So ultimately, when you go to court, if they can't prove the first lot of charges against you, it's irrelevant whether any of this matters. It's irrelevant, this issue with a phone as well. I'll say they've got to prove their claim, and it doesn't mean you won't get shafted in court. A lot of the way I tell people to look at dealing with this is look at it from the point of view of you're setting the stage to have it overthrown on appeal. Expect them to convict you. Expect them to act as bent as arseholes. They'll convict you. They won't listen to a word you've got to say. They'll ignore every rule and regulation they're meant to follow, and expect them to do that because they will. Sometimes you might get the odd judge who will say, "Oh, yes, well, we've got to drop this case. You haven't got valid evidence for this and valid evidence for that." And sometimes these things can get dropped, or they'll get dropped on a silly little technicality. But for the best part, expect the worst, but prepare for using that against them because that's the way these people are going to act.
Sometimes things have to get worse before they get better, though.
Sometimes, yeah. Yeah, same with me. I mean, I went through a pre-trial and a trial hearing, then an appeal at the Crown Court, and it was about as kangaroo a court as you can get in all three of them. It was comical the way these people, carried on, acted. Even at the appeal stage when I was at the Crown Court, now it's going to the High Court. And they're going to have to drop it eventually because they've made themselves so bloody stupid. Especially now, I've got a transcript from the Crown Court. But sometimes that's how far you end up having to push these things, to finally get them dropped. So like I say, that's the way to look at this. But you've got to practice in your head. You can get with me on the role play group as well, and we can we can help get you prepared for court. We can make a phone call next week. I'll get together with you sometime next week. We'll make a phone call to the police. We'll ask a few questions. And I'll say, and the thing is, if they start making certain admissions or start getting nasty and aggressive, like I say, that can all be used in your favour as well. It's all leverage that can be used pre-trial and before before hopefully it even goes to appeal anyway. So like I say, it's all little things that we can use against them. Basically, there's a lack of evidence. They're not prepared to see. The thing is they're asking you for certain evidence. Well, then let's see if they can reciprocate and show you facts themselves. Show you the evidence they've got. But like I say, they could just turn around and say, well, because this is an investigatory stage still, we're not prepared to discuss that stuff with you. That could.
All right, in thinking.
So, but like I say, you got to think about. Sorry, go on.
If I told them I was going to represent myself, then would they have to send everything to me as and when they found out at every step?
Once the investigation's finished, then yes, whatever they find against you, they must send you everything. Yeah. Okay. Everything that they're going to use against, everything they found, regardless of whether they're going to use it against you, yes, everything they find has to be sent, brought against you. And you've got to remember, they're not going to be looking for evidence of innocence. They're only ever going to be looking for evidence of guilt. So it's going to be automatically prejudiced against you anyway. Yeah. They look for evidence to fit their predetermined opinion. They're not going to be looking for evidence that's going to prove something otherwise, something different.
Yeah.
And they don't look at it from the point of view of it's a violation of a right. We have to prove a violation of a right. What they're trying to do is they're trying to build up evidence to back up an allegation and not evidence to prove that there was the violation of a right. That's how obviously they put these things together. I've not been in a police investigation like that, but I've been in an investigation like that when I've been working for I worked for a big company years ago, and if they want to bring a disciplinary investigation against you, that's all they're looking for, and that's what we picked out. I'll say this is how I suppose I started really getting into this stuff, but it was just before I bought my flat, which I've now lost. And this was all going on then. And this is what we noticed. Once you sat back and actually watched how they worked and how they did it, that's how they operate. The police are no different. They have it predetermined in the head. You've been accused, therefore you're guilty. Let's find the evidence to back up that preconception. It's not look for evidence of innocence, because that doesn't help us. We're only going to look for this type of evidence, and we're going to ignore, and they're going to ignore everything else that could prove you innocent or could prove that, or anything that would conflict or prejudice their case. They're going to ignore that.
Okay.
But the thing that they're overlooking is the violation of a legal right. That probably won't even enter their minds.
Yeah.
Because to them that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that you're innocent. Yeah, we came into your house and we found the plants. How can you possibly be innocent? How can you possibly not find you guilty? Even in the judge's mind, you'll be in front of those magistrates. They'll be thinking to themselves, how can you possibly not be innocent? Or sorry, how can you possibly be innocent? Well,
I am innocent.
So the facts of law applies. Do you have jurisdiction? Can you prove my presence within the UK? Can you prove that I've violated anybody's rights? Are you claiming to be following the rules under the Human Rights Act? Are you presuming me innocent? Yes. Well, therefore, you're not presuming these laws apply to me, then, are you?
Uh-huh.
Because and this is what gets them in a bind. Because, well, of course it applies. It applies wherever. Well, then you can't be presuming me innocent. Then, therefore, you're in breach of the Human Rights Act. Your rules, not mine.
Yeah, their rules.
So,
not mine.
See what I mean? So that's it. Because you can't presume someone innocent and presume the law applies, because they have to presume. Like I was saying before, if they're going to presume you innocent, they have to presume you innocent of every element. And an element is the law. The statute is an element of the allegations they're bringing against you. Or an element of the investigation and the alleged crime that you committed. I say so when they talk about actus reus and mens rea, those are elements of the allegations, not elements of the offence. Remember that, because that's what they try and bring against you. They say, "Oh, well, the elements are actus. We just have to prove you the act was committed." Well, they can turn around and prove that plants are in your house. Yes, well, now prove that I knowingly committed a criminal act. And how can they do that? Well, then they have to get inside your mind, don't they? Somebody has to be, is anybody in this investigation going to be qualified to understand your state of mind at the time?
Doubtfully.
Yeah, well, there you go. The only way anyone could ever do that is if they were God and in your head. So, like I say, but they're elements of the allegation. They claim that they're elements of the crime, but they can't get past that allegatory stage. They can't get past stage one. They can't get past stage one of any of this. And like I say, it's the same with anything, whether they bring the parking ticket against you, speeding, anything like that. Whenever they're bringing a claim against you, it's always it's just an allegation. They don't go any deeper behind it than that.
So if we do counterclaims against their actions, I mean, stop them doing it so often, yeah?
Well, it would be nice, but I mean, I hear people talk about this a lot. I'm going to counter-sue the police and I'm going to have a counter-claim and all this stuff. In my experience, this doesn't work. At the end of the day, it's all about damage control. You just want to get these people to leave you alone. You don't want to keep fighting these people. You just want to get them to leave you alone so you can live in peace. So if you start wanting to make counter-claims against them, fair enough, that's on your back, but the thing is with the police is, like I said, they can't be held liable. They don't have a duty to protect us, therefore we can't hold them liable for anything. So even if they do cock up and violate your rights and all that, it's extremely difficult. I mean, look at Michael Doherty. Have you heard about his case where he's taken on the police? There was a chap called Michael Doherty. He called into Mark's show a couple of weeks back. Look it up online. Just type in, Google it, Michael Doherty, police private prosecution. He's bringing a private prosecution against two police officers. I think it's from up near. Well, it's up north. It's not from London. It's not Met Police. It's one of the other police forces. But he's bringing. I think it's up near Berkshire. He lives. He's bringing private prosecution against two police officers. They've made his life hell since he wanted to do this, because these people won't allow themselves to be held accountable for anything. And this is the problem. It's all right claiming, technically, on paper, they claim you can counter-claim or sue the police. They say you can do that. In practice, it's another ball game.
Okay.
And like I say, they'll protect themselves and they'll they'll go to the nastiest, meanest methods to stop you from ever holding these people accountable. I mean, at most you can file a complaint like you do in that, and in which case you'll probably spend the next year or two being harassed by the police every time you go out in a car or something. Because that's how they behave. They behave like children. The moment you make a complaint against them, they'll harass you for a good couple of years, or could even be the rest of your life, depending on on the involvement you've had with them, how much they've cheesed you off. I've known it to happen to people over the pettiest of things, but this is how these people act on the NSP group. It's all about damage control. It's all about just getting these people to finally leave you in peace, and then that's it. And forget going after them. We know we can't hold these people accountable. They're corrupt. They're as bent as they need to get. They're as bent as they can possibly be. So don't, there's no point believing that there's any justice in this system. There isn't.
No, I think they should be accountable. Like I saw on Channel 4 News.
They should be, but they won't let you hold them accountable. I know they should be. That's the way the world should work if we had justice. We don't live in a world where we have any justice. Yeah. Not under their system anyway. I'm sorry, if that sounds, I don't mean to sound defeatist or anything else, but that's the way these people operate.
It is. Or they have been.
They won't. Yeah.
It's how they have been operating, but it's about time it stopped, isn't it, really?
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is basically what we do with these groups that are coming up and exposing this. It's all about exposing them for what they really are. Once they start losing the support that people once had in them, or this belief that they're there to protect us and be our servants and this, that, and the other. Once that all starts to break down, they lose support. People people will stop buying the program, and it'll all collapse. And they'll collapse under their own weight. And that's the only way this is really going to happen. It's going to have to come about slowly, and people are just going to have to slowly, bit by bit, start waking up to what they're doing. But this is the thing. I mean, this is what we do with shows like this. We try to expose this and show them for what they really are. And it's just going to take enough people to wake up to finally stop. But I think the effects we've had with the truth movement and everything else, the effect that we've started having on them is significant, and they're starting to feel it. And that's evidenced by the way they've reacted towards, the community at large, the truth community at large, such as the Freeman and all that. I'm not saying I agree with everything Freeman do, but they've certainly kicked up a shitstorm, pardon my language.
Yeah. It's good. It's all good. It's overdue.
It is, yeah. It's many thousands of years overdue. It's not just in our lifetime. All the generations that came before us, they lived under this tyranny as well. It's just that we're one of we're lucky enough, I suppose, in a sense, to be alive at a time when this generation of people are really starting to wake up to this. And we've got that technology available to us to do that, to give us the ability to do that. And we just happen to be alive at a point in time, a point in history when this is happening. Yeah, that's what happened at some time. That's what happened at some point, and here we are.
Einstein said an interesting thing about technological. Oh, I wish I had a good memory.
Yeah, mine's buggered as well.
Technological advancement is like an axe in the hands of the criminally. I should have just looked it up, and then I could have read it out. Sometimes I'm trying to remember it.
What is this? It's a quote from someone, is it?
Einstein.
Oh.
Right, okay.
Something like, technological processes or advancement is like an axe in the hands of the criminally
insane,
compulsive kind of thing.
Criminal class, yeah. Yeah, I'll look that quote up. I'll mention that later. But I mean, you're right. I know what you're saying. It's like with anything. Anything can be used for good or bad if it's something that can be of benefit. And the thing with the government and the military complexes, anything that gets designed technology-wise, they always want to be able to exploit it for their own ends instead of actually using it for the good. And anything that does do good to people, they want to bury it, they want to hide it, such as all the alternative energy technologies that we've had and still have available, and all the medicine, cures for cancer and everything else that we know exists. Anything like that, they want to hide it, they want to bury it, they don't want people to know about it because it doesn't do them any good. It's only their agenda they're interested in, not the betterment of us. And we know that. It's not that's nothing new.
Okay, did you say you had somebody else calling in? Because I don't want to take all your time, and I've got a few things to do.
Yeah, we're Soul is still with us now. I'm not sure I can actually hear him still.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. Hello, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I've just been listening to Weedman's case. That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I've got a slightly different case, but dealing with the same psychopaths. The taxman.
Yep.
Basically, I think 2010 I was self-employed, and I did the self-assessment thing online and filed it and sent it. The following year, because I closed up the business, there wasn't work, so I was employed for 2011 to 2012, and filled out the necessary paperwork where I can't remember what it was, but it basically asked if you were self-employed or but basically I said I'm now employed with this company. So as far as I was aware, that was it. Now this year I just got a letter from the taxman saying that I owe them money to the tune of £300 for I think it's a penalty notice for filing in the self-assessment late or something like that. So I called up.
Right, but you're actually working for somebody though.
Yeah, I was actually working for somebody during that time. Right. So I called them up and I said, well, I was actually employed. I wasn't self-employed for the year that you say that I was self-employed. And she turned around and said, well, did you notify us? I said, well, yeah, I filled out. I can't remember for the life of me what form I filled out. That was actually now employed by that company. So as far as aware, I thought that was it. But she said, no, you have to pay the money. She wasn't really helpful. She just said, oh, you have to pay the money. So I thought, no, this doesn't sound right. So I did a little bit of research, and someone was advising me to just send them acceptance for value.
Yeah, I'd stay away from all that stuff unless you really know what you're doing with that, and most people don't.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't think there's any merit to it. It's just that I think that a lot of it comes from all different sources, from America, Australia, Canada, and all that, and nobody's actually nailed the process down to know whether it actually works or not. I can understand why it should work, and I understand the concepts behind it, but you're dealing with a corrupt organisation. They don't want people using this stuff, even if what you're doing was correct. They just throw it back in your face. They don't want to accept it because they don't want people knowing that actually the way you settle your bill is just simply send them a bit of paper, sign it, and say there you go, it's paid, it's done. It's just as good as those bits of paper that come from those forged bits of paper that come from the Bank of England. So I'd stay away from that. And like I was saying before, it gets you labelled. It'll be a red flag. It'll get you labelled as as a free man on the land and all this sort of thing. And like I say, and then they'll use that against you. You're better off asking for facts proving there's an obligation to pay and why. I'd just send a letter to them, just stating the circumstances, saying that at that time. I take it when you had to work for this firm, you signed a P46 or something like that. Probably, which is what they do. Well, there you go. All you got to say is it was my understanding by doing that. I was letting you know that I was no longer self-employed and actually working for somebody else. And there you go. I take it that was a full-time business. It wasn't
Yeah.
part-time, was it? So they can't turn around and say, well, you might have been doing that on the side and this full-time sort of thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because I just wanted to make sure before I do anything or interact with them again, I got some more advice on how to approach them, and
Hmm.
without sort of like get myself into more trouble, as it were. Because I know.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, yeah, no, because
well, I mean, I'd make the point of saying to them, it's only simply because you did so out of if you can use a better word than fear, I suppose, but you can turn around and say, just simply out the fact that I did not wish to be threatened um, with fines and sanctions, sort of thing, and just say that lay out the circumstances. But however, if you do claim that I'd state in the letter, however, if you still pursue this, that I have this obligation to pay this, so then please provide the following facts. And I'll say, I'd lay out these questions, proving that there's who's it who made the legal determination that I had this obligation to file and now pay this fine, sort of thing.
uh-huh.
If you want to get together with me next week, I'll say I'm helping out Weed Man, and if you want to get together with me during the week as well, we can make a call to the HMRC.
Okay.
And I'll help you put a letter. I've got some template letters we can use, and oh, hang on, I've got to plug in a power source to my computer before it goes off. Oh, give me a second. There we go. I'm going to get cut off mid-air. Yeah, and we'll put a letter together. Just see where you go with that. And I mean, chances are for 300 quid, sometimes I just back off. You never hear anything again. Obviously, when it's a few, when it's several tens of thousands, sometimes they're a bit more, reluctant to want to back off.
Yeah.
But over 300 quid, sometimes, they'll just let it go. Or you may end up in another year's time, another letter with another, they'll increase the fine to 500 quid or something like that. That sometimes happens to people. But, we'll put together a letter. Let's just see what sort of response you get. And if you like, we'll make a call to the HMRC. We'll try and get through to the relevant department, and we'll ask them a few questions, and let's see what we can get them to admit. And it might, given the fact that we know they're not going to be able to produce any facts, may help get them off your back as well. That, along with the letter, may help. And I mean, I've helped a couple of people out so far who've sent letters off to the HMRC, and they haven't heard nothing back. They do seem to have backed off and left them in peace, and there are easier targets, especially for 300 quid.
Yeah.
If they know you're just going to question them on it and not cough up straight away without caring in front of them, then sometimes they just drop it. It probably costs them more than that running the machinery they have to use to send these things out half the time. So like I say, it's just if people just pay up and don't. Don't question it, then it's easy money for them. But obviously, once it stops becoming that, they either make it a vendetta or they just back off.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of seeing how they're going to react to it. Like I say, get together with me next week. I'll help you get a letter sorted out, and we'll make a phone call to them.
Yeah, definitely.
That's all you got to do. Just ask these questions, about 3 or 4 questions either. I'm just trying to bring it up now, but we have a standard letter that we use basically. Just for the HMRC.
All right.
Which I'm just trying to find, which I can't. Damn it, it's always a bloody way, isn't it, whenever you're trying to do these things.
So what's the process with the HMRC? When you fail to pay, what do? They take it to court, or do they just take it straight to a debt collector?
No, would I have to go to court? Sometimes, usually it goes to a county court, and then it can go to the High Court if they go for bankruptcy, but they're not likely to go for bankruptcy against you over 300 quid. It's when they're after several thousands, people who don't file, and then they make up a figure and say, well, as far as we're concerned, this is what you earned that year, 50,000 quid, pay it or else. Pay us 20,000 of that 50,000 we reckoned you earned, and they can just make figures up off the top of their head. And apparently, according to them, that's perfectly legitimate. and they can, if people don't pay up or refuse to cooperate, you can end up having your house taken off you in the end. But that can take a couple of years to get to that stage. But providing you do the paperwork correctly, in terms of asking them the right question and challenge it in the right way, sometimes they can back off and they'll leave you alone. But I've seen a lot of people get into trouble using a lot of this freeman stuff with the HMRC, and they've lost everything. They've had their houses nicked off and a lot. It's destroyed families, and it's bloody terrible what's happened to some people. So, like I say, I don't recommend people use any of these freeman methods, the trust law stuff, anything like that. Because the moment you start sending them that sort of paperwork, they'll just label you as a nut job. And when you go into court, whether you then change tact and start using valid questions against them, they've already got it in for you, and they're not going to listen to a damn word you have to say.
So that's how they counter. That's
Yep.
how they're countering the Freeman movement, and that they're just sort of like saying that they're pretty much insane and just ignore you and just still use coercion and force.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they've probably had this happen probably just about every court up and down the country now, where people are sending these forms and notices to them and things like that. And like I say, it just gets you labelled. I mean, there was I don't know whether this is true or not, but it was like a memo that was sent around to the Justice Clerks a few years back. And yeah, what was I saying about the courts? Yeah, like I was saying, it does appear that most courts have experienced people using these tactics against them. And then, like I say, with these memos that have been passed about how they have to deal with us, is they just they now look at the people who use this sort of stuff against them as people who are just trying to disrupt the court and cause them problems, sort of thing. Nothing you have to say is legitimate. You have absolutely no valid arguments you can use against them. Blah blah blah. So yeah, they just want to stick labels on people. It doesn't matter whether you're using valid valid questions against them or not, or valid issues. That's it. The moment they want to label you that, it doesn't matter what you got to say. You might as well talk to a brick wall. So try not to get yourself in that trap. I mean, even using Mark's stuff, we've had people turn around in some of the courts, or when we've gone up talk to solicitors, and it turns out, this is all that freeman nonsense, isn't it? I had a clerk of the court say that to me once. I think, this is all the freeman nonsense. I said, what are you on about? I said, I'm not claiming to be a freeman, am I? I'm not claiming, that this is I'm a person and this is my straw man and all that stuff. Where have you heard me say any of that? I'm asking you for facts.
Yeah.
But this is how they do try to label you sometimes. So it's any challenge to their authority. That's it. They want to label you a free man now, even if you've never heard of the bloody thing anymore. Sometimes people get labelled it, regardless. But like I say, don't put yourself in that position where it's going to raise a red flag, and that's it. Because it just won't help you. It just make it a little bit harder for you when it doesn't need to be. It's going to be hard enough trying to get facts out of them already, which we're never going to get. So don't make it any worse for yourself. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I was watching something on Talkie TV or something like that, and these bailiffs were coming to I don't know if you watched it. They were coming to clamp a car, and they had all these notices up. They were pretty much on the right. They didn't do anything wrong. They were pretty much sort of like throwing all the paperwork at them and all the notices, but the police didn't take notice of it. They just barged in literally and just took the car anywhere. I was thinking, geez, these guys really, they don't care what you say or whether
exactly. Yeah, that's right. They don't care what you say. Let's say so. This is why when we go into court, we don't take a position against them. We don't make any claims. We don't, start making accusations of them or anything. We know what they're going to do. We just let them walk into it. We give them enough rope to hang themselves. And that's the strategy we use. We're not attacking them. We're attacking the rationale of the game. Yeah, so that's why, like I say, it's more effective. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to work, but what you're doing is you're putting them in a position where they're hanging themselves or they're digging their own hole, and you can't necessarily always win this at the first hearing or the first, trial. You may have to take this to appeal where they've put themselves into such a position they can't make this look good anymore. The only thing they care about is making it look good. They don't care about anything else. They don't care about rules, regulations, or anything else. It's the perception. It's the public perception. They have to make it appear legitimate. Doesn't mean it is. Doesn't mean they're actually doing what they're meant to be doing or following their own rules. It just has to appear that way. It's all an illusion, and that's all we do. We just break down that, we just break down that illusion, and we show them for what they are. What's the word for it? What's the phrase? Don't look at the man behind the curtain. Well, we're pulling that curtain back all the time. And that's what we do, and that's. It's that simple. When you go after the facts, it's something that we all understand. It's all common sense. We all have disability. We all understand the world around us. In terms of the reality, even though we're seeing. Yeah. You can't watch somebody get beat up at the side of the street by a couple with a baton, and not see another man beating another man up with a baton. Just because he's wearing a uniform, they're trying to say, "Oh, it's legitimate. It's a copper. It's okay." No. You're just seeing another man being beaten by another man. That's what you're really seeing, and that's what we point out. Whereas other people would say, "Oh, well, it's a copper beating somebody else up." No, it ain't. What are you really seeing? Take the blinkers off, and what are you really seeing? And most people can see that. Most people won't, even if it means sometimes you have to give them a nudge to point it out to them. They can see it. But like I say, that's all we do. We stick to the facts. We keep it. We keep it really simple. But you've got to you've got to be able to separate facts from opinion. Facts, opinion, and fiction. You've got to be able to separate the two, and keep the two in the right place. You've got to keep them in those. In a proper context when you're using them. Like I say, when somebody says that the law applies to you, and you say, "Well, what facts have you got?" Well, it applies to everyone. It says so here. And you say, "Is that a fact?" So they'll go, "Yeah, of course it's a fact." No, it's a fact that that's your opinion. It's a fact that that's the opinion of everybody else, or the people, the people who are sitting in there, the legislators, barristers, whatever. Yeah, It's a fact. That's an opinion. But you're not interested in that as a fact. You're interested in the facts behind that opinion. Do you understand? So when somebody's giving you an opinion, yes, it's a fact that they believe it applies to you, but that doesn't make it a fact that it actually does. It just simply means it's a fact that they have a belief, that they have an opinion. That's the fact. It doesn't make it a fact that somehow then makes it true. That somehow makes it apply. It doesn't. And that's what you've got to be able to do. That's what you've got to be able to figure, to get straight in your head so you can understand it. I mean, I'm thick as a dingback me. I'm not particularly bright, but I can get my head around this, and if I can do it, anybody can. So
that's the way law should be, isn't it? It's just now being complicated, so people don't understand it and can't challenge it.
Exactly. I mean, the principles, a lot of it's founded on, like I say, all this stuff with the calls of action and everything else. When you actually read into it and look into it, just from a layman's point of view, it makes perfect sense. It does make sense. There has to be a victim in order for someone to bring an allegation against you. Yeah, of course, that makes sense. That's not totally ridiculous. But the problem is they try then to make it appear good, public relations. They try and make it look good, that justifies using violence against somebody. Well, no, it doesn't. And certainly if the victim is an abstract victim, i.e. the public, you're claiming it's everybody, when the truth is people went about their daily lives not without a clue of what was going on and what you did. It hasn't affected anybody in reality. The only way it's affected somebody is simply an opinion based in somebody's head. And that's it. That's the only way it can claim to apply to somebody. Or that's all they can bring. And that's ridiculous, isn't it? So that's the thing. But the actual foundations that the legal system is based on a lot of common sense and certain things that are reasonable. It's just that they've taken something that's perfectly reasonable and then twisted it and convoluted it into something that's actually insane. Because like I say, they have to mix it. They have to mix a lot of insanity with a lot of public relations. So that's what I mean. Why they care about how this looks good. They have to make this appear legitimate, as they call it. And they're very good at doing it because they've got 99% of the world convinced this stuff is. This stuff is valid or whatever. Well, obviously it isn't. But once you start picking it apart and you actually start getting to the real foundations of it, it all starts to fall apart. You realise the entire legal system is absolutely flawed, flat on his face. And the reason it's flawed is it's compulsory you support it. That totally invalidates government. Government, how can someone be a public servant when you're forced to support them?
Yeah, I never got that around my head. I was aware because we got a letter through saying that if you don't register to vote, you could face a fine for £1,000 or something. I was thinking, gosh, you've even been forced to register to vote.
Yeah. And supposedly it's voluntary. Well, how can something be voluntary when it's coerced that you do it? There you go. And the thing is, the way we actually support government is through taxation, obviously. It's through our hard labour. It means a portion of our hard labour, the time we put into trying to feed ourselves and families every day, they want to take a portion of that and claim that we owe it to them first before we're even allowed to touch it. So that is actually how we really support them. All this issue of voting is redundant. You know, it's ridiculous that people can claim that we vote and that's what makes it valid, or you know, that's the voluntary part of how we support government. It isn't. It's compulsory we support government, and the way we actually support government on a practical level, you know, in the real world is, you know, we give them a portion of our credit, you know, the credit we earn every day to try and feed ourselves. You know, that's how we actually support them. Because if they never had that, it wouldn't matter whether we voted for them or not. If they could never take money out of their pockets and keep us under that level of control, it would all fall apart for them, and they know that.
So I suppose, like, because I'm just noticing some comments I see on.
Ceylon, want to come in? Hello, Ceylon, if you want to come in, mate, and have a quick chat. Still got a little bit of time left.
No, I'm just listening, thanks.
Oh, okay, mate, all right.
Well,
I can't read your comments, mate. If you want to come on quickly and tell me what you were saying.
Oh, basically, it's up to my point of, you know, when you have to register, and he said he hasn't registered, and he's obviously used something that can gives him immunity from them then enforcing their laws on him. Was that sort of similar thing, like with the TV license, that you can sort of have some sort of immunity if you just ask them?
I wouldn't say you can give yourself immunity. You can't. They're going to force this onto you. Like I say, it's all coercion. It's all violence. That's how it operates. So you can't exactly give yourself immunity. They give themselves immunity, but unless you're a member, unless you're in their club, you can't actually give yourself immunity. But you know what you can prove is that there's no facts proving that there's an obligation on you to get such a license or pay such a fee to begin with, and that's based on facts. That's got nothing to do with whether you want to give yourself immunity or not. If you give yourself immunity, you're just giving them a legal opinion that somehow you're immune from their laws. It's not a matter of claiming that a law doesn't apply to you. It's about them proving it applies to you, which we know they can never do. So that's all you're doing. You're calling them on it.
Isn't it because you live in the UK?
If you want to claim a law applies to me, fine, okay. Now prove it.
So their opinion, basically, it's just that their opinion's got force and yours doesn't. That's pretty much it.
It's just that they have to use violence because, yes, without the violence, there's no other way they can prove it applies to you. Now, just because somebody can stick a gun in your face and claim that you have an obligation to give them something, does that make that obligation valid?
No.
Well, there you go. That's it. It's that simple. Doesn't have to get any more complicated than that, and that's why these people can't prove that any of this applies to us or creates any sort of obligation. Because if bureaucrats never had violence to back up their actions, nobody would take notice of them. If a bureaucrat came knocking on your door saying, "Oh, please pay us this money for the TV license," and you went up yours, and you knew there was nothing they could do about it, they would walk away, and you would never hear from them again. Who would pay? If people had a choice to pay income tax, would they pay?
No, I doubt it.
Well, there you go. So, and we know this. You know, we know this. You know, that's and that's the way it's always been. You know, throughout history, there have been periods of history in this country when the kings and the ruling criminal class never had the sort of hold and leverage they do now. So there have been times in this country and other parts of the world, and there still are certain parts of the world where government doesn't intervene and tax communities. One example is the Eskimos. Is it the Inuits, whatever they're called? Sorry, if I've offended them, but I believe it's the Inuits, isn't it?
Yeah.
Live at the poles and that. They don't have a government, believe it or not. They don't tax each other. They live in a community, the big family communities of tribes. They look after each other. They feed each other. They do perfectly well, and they don't have a government. Now their lifestyle and their land that they live off is now being threatened by, believe it or not, obviously other governments. That's who they're under threat from. So it just goes to prove that there are places on this planet where we can show that, regardless of people turning around saying, "Oh, we need government for this and we need government for that," bullshit. There's communities still alive on this planet to this very day that don't have governments, and they survive perfectly well. And the only thing they're under threat from are other bloody governments. And they get by without having to tax the end and steal out of each other. So it just goes to show, this whole thing isn't needed. And the whole thing with taxation is a claim where you'd never have the roads, you'd never have this, you'd never have that. Codswallop. A service is determined by how useful and how much people want it. That's what determines whether people are prepared to pay for it or not. And that will always be voluntary. So if a service isn't that needed or that wanted by people, they won't pay for it. Simple as that. And it doesn't matter how precious or how much you claim people need this thing. You can't force them to pay for it if they don't want to pay for it. If it's not a worthy cause. And obviously we need roads, and obviously we need public services in terms of hospitals and the binman and things like that. People would still pay for that just because if people stop paying tax tomorrow, they wouldn't turn around and say, "Oh, well, that's it. Won't have the binman coming around no more. I haven't got to pay for it no more." It's ridiculous, isn't it? But there you go. So this is the whole thing. Government claims it's there for a certain purpose, and that purpose is completely the means don't justify the end. Simple as that.
There's a message on. I think I am Ty's sending. Got 4 minutes.
Yeah, we haven't got very long. I'm going to have to cut the call short.
Yeah, so I don't want to take up too much time. Maybe somebody else wanted to say something.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, if you want to call in again next week and talk about this a bit more, perfectly free to do so. So, we do encourage people to come in and talk about anything. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is. I'll say just call back next week if you haven't got to ask everything you want to ask me today. But so we'll get together next week anyway.
Yeah.
We'll contact the police for HMRC and all that, and I'll help you get a letter. I'll get one. I'll pull out one of my template letters, and we'll adapt it for your personal needs. And what I'll do is I will eventually I'll get that letter made available on the website. That'd be nostateprojectuk.co.nr. So I think that's it. I'm going to have to cut. Going to have to close down the show now. And thanks everybody for listening in. And thanks for all my callers. Do appreciate it. And I'll be back again next Sunday with No State Project Reloaded from 1:00. And Mark's show will be on again next Saturday live. If you want to listen to that, and then you can listen to the full version on the Sunday as well on Darkcity Radio. So that's me signing off now. Thanks ever so much, everybody, and thanks again for listening all. And till next week, I'll be seeing you then. Goodbye for now.